Ladies and gentlemen, First Lady Madam Sajida Mohammed.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تخونوا الله والرسول وتخونوا أماناتكم وأنتم تعلمون. واعلموا أنما أموالكم وأولادكم فتنة وأن الله عنده أجر عظيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن اتقوا الله يجعل لكم فرقانا ويكفر عنكم إن تتقوا الله يجعل لكم فرقانا ويكفر عنكم سيئاتكم ويغفر لكم والله ذو الفضل العظيم. وإذ يمكر بك الذين كفروا ليثبتوك أو يقتلوك أو يخرجوك ويمكرون ويمكر الله والله خير الماكرين. صدق الله العظيم.
First Lady Madam Sajida Mohammed, Minister of Housing, Land and Urban Development, Dr. Ali Haider Ahmed, distinguished guests and honored attendees, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the second day of the workshop on gender data use in policy making in the Maldives. This two-day workshop is a collaboration between Maldives Bureau of Statistics, Ministry of Social and Family Development, and Paris 21. It is to validate the finding of the study done to see the uptake of gender data in decision making. The opening of this session was started by the recitation of Holy Quran by Al-Qari Hussein Irshad. Up next is the opening remarks by the Minister of Housing, Land and Urban Development, Dr. Ali Haider Ahmed. Dr. Ali Haider Ahmed.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. First Lady of the Maldives, Madam Sajida Muhammad, Policy Analyst, Gender Data at Paris 21, Ms. Sophie Keneally, officials from MBS, Ministry of Social and Family Development, invited guests, Assalamu alaikum. I am honored to welcome Ms. Sajida Muhammad, First Lady of Maldives, as the keynote speaker today. On behalf of the Ministry of Housing, Land and Urban Development, it is my honor and pleasure to welcome you all to the Advocacy Workshop on Gender Data Use in Policymaking. It gives me great pleasure to say a few words at the workshop on the use of gender data in policymaking. As we embark on this journey with the new administration, evidence-based decision-making becomes pivotal to us. In particular, the use of gender data at decision-making should not be ignored. Data and statistics has never been more important than it is today due to globalization, rapid expansion in technology, and diversification of Maldivian economy. In an era where Maldives, along with the whole international community, is mobilized to implement the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, we need to inform policies to understand the world we live in and to monitor and assess progress. The 2030 Agenda has vast data needs. Ensuring that no one is left behind requires data at an unprecedented level of granularity. I wish to congratulate MBS, Ministry of Social and Family Development, and Paris 21 for the significant amount of work carried out in the area of gender statistics. The findings of this study will be used to improve the data availability for government policy and planning needs and other user needs. The findings that we unveil today are not mere statistics or data points. They paint a picture of the opportunities and challenges faced by the data producers and users. Disseminating this study is not merely an academic exercise, it is a call to action. We must engage in open dialogues, challenge the existing norms, and collaborate to bridge the gender gap. While we may be confident using our statistical system based on official data, we are now confronted with a number of challenges, just to name a few. First, we lack sufficient number of staff to carry out the statistical activities. Second, challenges in hiring statisticians due to skill and salary scale mismatch is a huge obstacle. Third, budget constraints for statistical activities are also another impediment that we have to face. Together, we can leverage this study to build a brighter future, one where opportunity and progress are not limited by gender, but embraced by all. I am confident that with unwavering commitment and collaborative efforts, we can make the Maldives a beacon of digital inclusivity and gender equality in the region and beyond. I thank you for your attention. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Thank you, Minister. Before we proceed, I would like to invite policy analyst Sophie Keneally to give a short presentation on the key outcomes of this study.
So thank you, Yanni, and thank you to all of the officials joining us today, and of course, especially to our keynote speaker, First Lady Madame Sajida Mohammed. Thank you for joining us, and thank you all of you for your hard work yesterday, and in advance for taking it forward tomorrow and every day as we go forward. I think Dr. Ali Haidar made a very pertinent description of where we are. You spoke about embarking on this journey. And I think this is very important because we all know where we're going. We all know what the end goal is. We want a gender-equitable Maldives for women, men, boys, and girls. But the question is, what is the best way to get there? And data is a very important means of informing how we get there at every stage of that journey. So I think we've had a short introduction about what the study is, but of course, thank you to our partners who've been with us in the last year that we've been working on this initiative. However, there are lots of people who haven't been thanked and who I won't manage to thank in one mouthful. But just an overview, I know some of these ministries may have changed, but an overview just to give an idea of how many different stakeholders have been involved throughout this study. We've had development partners, we've had civil society, line ministries, and various different government agencies. So thank you to you all. The specific research question that we were looking at is what are the barriers and enablers to gender data use in policymaking in the Maldives? We used a mixed method approach, so we had an inception workshop, we had one stakeholder survey, and the key informant interviews. And of course, yesterday, the final stage of the validation. In terms of the outcomes of the study, the aim is not for this to be an academic outcome. This is very much for you all. So the aim is for it to be action-orientated. So we're focusing on what are recommendations in going forward, and importantly, how do we make sure that these recommendations don't end up on a shelf, but are realistic and that we can bring them forward. So just to give a very, very short comment on policy making, we noticed through the study that policymakers is often just perceived to be that final stage, that decision-making stage. But when we talk about using data, we talk about data on every stage of the policymaking cycle. So whether you're at technical level, whether you're researching, whether you're disseminating data, monitoring and evaluation, gender data should be with you at every stage of that journey. So I spoke a little bit about the process already, so I won't hold on that too long, but perhaps just on the key informant interviews. We focused on 4 specific use cases on this. The idea was to process trace exactly how gender data was used in specific cases. So as I mentioned to our colleagues who joined us yesterday, often when we ask, what do you normally have for breakfast? The answer is very different to what did you have for breakfast this morning. So to get very realistic answers about how gender data is used, by whom it is used, what the barriers and enablers are, we focused on these different use cases, some of which are specific to gender and others aren't. Yesterday, as you will see from our display of some of the comments left by the participants, in fact, there were so many ideas shared yesterday that the paper is so heavy with ideas that it's fallen to the ground already. So just one incredible thank you to everybody who joined us yesterday, who helped to validate the results. We had one session on looking at the key messages, the key findings, and seeing if these resonated, if there were experiences that the participants could share relating to these key messages. And then we had a similar session based on the recommendations. So the idea here is to move from recommendation to something that looks a little bit more like a roadmap. For those of you who were with us yesterday, bear with me as I go through some of the key findings. I have also included some of the initial reactions from yourself. So what have you validated? What did you add to these key findings? If you don't see your contribution, it's because it was a very long night last night and I haven't added them all. But of course, we will take them all into account with the final report. So the findings can be broadly categorized under 3 main pillars. The first of which is data production and availability. The second, data sharing and dissemination. And the final is uptake of data in decision making. So when we look at data availability, we saw 3 main points coming out of the study. Generally, data was seen as very readily available. However, there were times when it could be more up to date. This allows policy to target what's happening now or very recently. The need for longitudinal data, so capturing data over time to see changes in trends, changes in issues and who they're affecting, and the digitalization of collection, especially at local level. The second point is on granularity. So when we talk about gender data, this doesn't mean that we limit this to just sex disaggregated data, but we look at what are some of the intersections with age, with disability, or with geographical location. One point that came up yesterday is that while in some sectors sex disaggregated data is very readily available, it's not seen as relevant to all sectors. So how can we mainstream this need to understand how different issues affect men, women, boys, and girls? Thirdly, in terms of capturing the realities of power relations. So data can be very informative. Data can be also a little bit misinformative. So making sure that when we have our quantitative data, we also give some context to that. Are there some qualitative information that we can add? One example is data on things like access to bank accounts or access to assets like cars or boats. These may be listed under women, but is it women who have the decision-making power on how these are used or what the profits or benefits from these are? So thank you for those examples yesterday. Human resources. I think this probably came up the most. And this, of course, on the side of data production, but also through dissemination and use. So some of the additions made yesterday are the need for sector-specific technical skills within each sector. Are there people in your sector who really understand those issues? And are these internal staff? So it's great to have help from development partners, to have contractors, but it does mean that these are quite short-lived interventions within a ministry or an agency. So some sustainability could come perhaps from making sure that these skills are internalized. We also had that there was an overburden or a lot of responsibility for different staff members. And again, this comes to the skills and salary mismatch. The same person wearing multiple hats. They have a lot of tasks and responsibilities. So making sure that they have the time and, of course, where possible, the appropriate salary to match all those skills. A point that came up that we actually hadn't mentioned from the previous study components was the question of anonymity, and how this might actually hurdle data collection if there's a lack of understanding about if I respond to a survey or if I respond to an interview, is my data protected? And having this balance between making data available and making sure that the identity of every respondent is protected. And of course, this is even more specific in the Maldivian context with quite a small population. In terms of data sharing and dissemination, we spoke a lot about analysis. So quantitative data is very important in telling us things like what, when, but slightly restricted at times in what it can tell us about the causes and consequences of an issue. So needing to complement that quantitative data with some more qualitative research on causes and effects, not just in policy design, but also when it comes to policy review. What was the impact of this, and what can we learn perhaps from speaking to people or from other research methods? There were some hurdles mentioned to this yesterday, in particular the skills gap, that perhaps people aren't always equipped in every agency to be able to conduct this type of qualitative information. And of course, I think one issue that is probably universal is that policymaking is often quite rushed, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of staff capacity to actually conduct additional research. So finding that balance. Data sharing and interoperability, in specific between different line ministries and between different agencies, was mentioned as a challenge throughout every stage, and again confirmed yesterday. Partly this was mentioned to be due to a disparity in priorities, so what might be pressing for one agency might not be pressing for another, which of course is understandable, but trying to open that dialogue to try and close that disparity a little. A lack of confidence in agencies' own methodology. So if you share data, we all know this, anybody who's done research or data collection knows, I don't want to share it until I'm sure that it's perfect and nobody will question me on it. So this sometimes results in a reluctance to share data. Similarly, the way that data is stored was mentioned a lot yesterday, and how it's collected, that if it's harmonized and standardized, it's a lot easier to share and be understood by other agencies. Addressing this issue is, of course, important for reducing duplication and reducing the duplication of budgets as well. So although different organizations might have different focuses when they're looking at collecting information, a lot of the time this could be collected together if we open that dialogue earlier. And no central database. So ideally, to help people access, and when I say people, I mean decision makers, but also the media and the public, to know exactly where to look when they're addressing gender issues or want to mainstream gender. It would help to have one central place where all of that information is available. Preferences on data formats. So we have a lot of data users, and not everybody has the same needs and the same level of statistical understanding. So some may prefer raw data that they can use for their own analysis. Others may prefer user-friendly formats like infographics, or even, it came up yesterday, videos and audios, especially if we don't have much time. Sometimes it's easy just to have a snapshot of a certain issue. This stayed as well in terms of outreach to the public, so making sure that it's user-friendly. Most of the public aren't interested in reading through full data sets, so what's something important you want them to know, and what's the best way to target them? One suggestion was to use different social media, different platforms for different demographic. And also just work on making sure that people are aware that the data exists. So it may be there, it may be able to be used, but if people don't know it's ready, then of course it won't be taken up. In terms of engagement with the media, of course this is very important also in affecting political decision making and influencing the public and social norms. So the importance of making sure that accurate and understandable information reaches the media. We had a couple of very good examples of when the media misinterprets data and how quickly that can spread and change perceptions. So the media is a very important stakeholder to engage with in relation to gender data. Local level dissemination, there seems to be quite a lot of disparity between islands and atolls, so trying to encourage all different local governments to publish their data in a timely and user-friendly manner. Of course, this does require money. Being an island state, it does mean that reaching every different island and building capacity on every different island costs money, and it takes time. But I'm delighted to see that MBS is working on this already this week, so congratulations and good luck. Thematic reports. So again, if we look at an example of kind of gender and health or gender and finance, if we kind of package this as one thematic document or one thematic package, then it's a lot easier for people to use when they're making education policy. They know to look at the education and gender or climate and gender thematic report. This is a practice that's already ongoing in the Maldives, but trying to upscale this and look at different sectors. And informal relationships. So formal channels, the media or websites are very important, and I encourage you to keep using these. A lot of you mentioned these different channels yesterday, but also informal channels. So some people prefer just to pick up the phone to MBS, or ministries as well, or send out an email, which is great, and congratulations to you all for picking up those phone calls, but it can also be time-consuming for you all, and it might not be the easiest way for people to access data. So how do we make people aware of where that data is already published? And the final point on the uptake of data in decision-making, one is on timeliness of dissemination. And when we talk about timeliness, people automatically think as quickly as possible. And challenges were raised about sometimes data not always being timely in this sense. But also when we think about gender data use, we have to put our user hat on. And if we're going to use data, we want to receive that data when it's useful. So if you're a producer or a disseminator of data, think about, when should I make sure this data reaches a policymaker? Or when should I make sure that this data reaches the media? And it might not just be immediately after it's produced. How can it align to political processes and decision-making processes? In terms of engagement at political level, there has been engagement between data producers and parliament, as well as political leaders. But this could be made more consistent, and this could be expanded. So, of course, building up a relationship like this and building up a culture of exchange between data and political level takes time. It's maybe not something that will happen tomorrow, but there was agreement yesterday and also throughout the study that this is something that is important and meaningful for evidence-based decision-making. And social norms, of course, we can produce as much data as we like, and this can contribute to informing about social norms. But there are some parallel changes that need to happen if gender data-informed policymaking is to happen. Gender is still sometimes seen as something that's controversial. There are some misconceptions about this just being about women, for example, which is, of course, not the case. And some misconceptions about what a gender issue is. So trying to bring these parallel efforts to raise awareness across the policymaking cycle and across the public about why gender is important for the whole of society. I think the first point we had no additions on yesterday because everybody seems to be in agreement that MBS is a very reliable source of gender data, which isn't something that's seen in every country, so congratulations. One thing that people agreed on yesterday as well is the idea of a culture of evidence-informed decision-making. Again, this isn't something that's going to change with one report. A culture of how policy-making and decision-making happens changes over a long time. So looking at how we can change this culture, who we need to engage in order to promote evidence use. And similarly, the culture of gender mainstreaming. The lack of awareness that gender is relevant to every sector, that it's cross-cutting. A limited accountability, that every sector should be mainstreaming gender and asking, does my policy affect women and men differently? I'll give you a clue, it probably does. But making sure that this is understood because it's not so obvious in all sectors. It might be obvious in health, in education, in childcare, but not necessarily when it comes to things like climate change or waste or even housing. And And making sure that the capacity is there to integrate gender. Do people know how this is done? Do people know who they can ask for advice on doing this? And my final slide, I promise, is the human resource challenges, again, so not just specific to the production of data, but also some specifics came out yesterday, for example, in the communication sector. A lot of the recommendations focus on how can we communicate data. But if this is a sector where people aren't staying, if there isn't a salary to match the skills that are needed to communicate data, then there are going to be continued challenges in this communication. One suggestion when it comes to human resources, because there's a large staff turnover in a lot of agencies, was to actually internalize this in the human resource sector or units, which is seen as slightly more stable and with less staff turnover. And again, working on not just using contractors, but asking how can we have this knowledge and these skills in the Maldives and in a given ministry or agency. There is an interagency working group on gender statistics. I do wonder how many of you had heard of this. Probably not as many as we'd hoped when it was set up. There is still, throughout the study, people thought this could be something very meaningful, to bring different stakeholders together, to talk about gender data, to exchange gender data. But it hadn't been very successful. So just asking, how can we make it more attractive to the members? Ask them what can they gain from joining this gender statistics working group. And the final point, which again is something that we hadn't had until yesterday, but I think is a very good point that I wanted to add, is the question of sustainability. And I know there are some great opportunities coming now with this new administration for some slightly longer term planning. So I'm really excited to see what that brings. But how this could also help in terms of sort of the development of policy and the long-term vision, and how this can be informed by gender data and won't need to be sort of started from scratch, and which of course takes time and money and human resources. So I believe those are the final findings. We are coming after this validation to the very last stage of the study, which is the write-up of the findings. We will, of course, incorporate all of your validation ideas. I will also talk to my colleagues back in Paris. The idea is that this will be published. It will be your document. And hopefully then we can engage in some international exchange as well. So see what has been learned in the Maldives, what good practices can you share with other countries, and I think there are a lot. And of course, what can you learn as well? There's always an exchange when it comes to learning. It's not one way. So looking forward to supporting you with that. And the final step, after we've produced everything, we've published everything, and we've engaged in exchange, is to actually strengthen evidence-based policymaking. So after we've written it, let's do it. But thank you all. If you have any questions, please do feel free to ask. I'll also be around in the coffee break. But just thank you to you all, and I look forward to going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. It is indeed an honor and privilege to have with us today a woman of compassion and leadership. Without further ado, I would like to invite our distinguished guest, First Lady Madam Sajida Mohammed, to address the attendees.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Minister of Housing, Land and Urban Development, His Excellency Dr. Ali Haider Ahmad, Minister of State for Social and Family Development, Ms. Aminat Hussain Sharif, Ms. Aishat Hassan, Chief Statistician, Maldives Bureau of Statistics, Ms. Sophie Kennelly, Policy Analyst, Gender Data Partnership for Statistics for Development in the 21st Century of Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, distinguished participants of this workshop, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning to all. It's a great pleasure to be here today amidst experts in the fields of gender and data, which are both areas that are underutilized in policy making. Allow me, therefore, to first congratulate the Minister of Social and Family Development, Maldives Bureau of Statistics, and the Paris 21 Secretariat for the tremendous tasks that you had undertaken successfully. In the realm of policy, decisions crafted without a comprehensive understanding of gender disparities risks falling short of their intended impact. Gender data is not merely a collection of statistics. It embodies the realities, challenges, and aspirations of half the global population. As a developing nation with limited human and financial resources, as well as limited expertise, some of our challenges in national development have always stemmed from the lack of available data. I commend the work undertaken by Maldives Bureau of Statistics. Even with these limitations, the Maldives Statistics Act came into effect very recently, in July 2021. Even prior to that, a lot of effort has gone into conducting various surveys and census to collect data in different thematic areas for development. Ladies and gentlemen, the unfortunate truth is that in the Maldives, policies are made based on need, not based on data. But for policies to be effective, it is imperative that they be data-based. This is the first time the findings and recommendations from this initiative are shared. It has brought together different stakeholders, including civil society organizations, development partners of the Maldives, to validate the finding of this workshop and ensure its success. This will support the aim of a responsive roadmap in gender data usage. I'm confident this workshop has provided the opportunity to better understand how gender data is and can be used to inform policy in the Maldives. This study began in May of this year and comprises of a lot of research, interviews, and surveys. The culmination of this extensive work today is a testament to the importance attached towards collecting meaningful gender data. We should not let this opportunity pass, ladies and gentlemen. Data collection, availability, and analysis is not just a challenge that Maldives face. Globally, data analysis is a challenge, and more so, the availability of gender-segregated analyzed data is limited. As this new administration has just come into office less than 1 month ago, I believe this is the right time to ensure that new policies that are being made take into consideration available data, collect data, and consider the different aspects of it, including gender. This government of President Dr. Mohamed Moise is committed to ensuring that the development of the country goes in line with the wishes of the people. I urge all stakeholders to take this into consideration when drafting policies, regulation, as well as laws. But this government is committed to not gender equality, but to increase in women's participation in all levels of national development, to increase women's contribution to the economy as well as their participation in political and public life. In order to ensure, it is imperative to explore and find solutions to the underlying reasons for their low participation in those areas. Ladies and gentlemen, Maldives is able to report on 50% of the gender-specific indicators in the Sustainable Development Goal. Despite the availability of this data, it needs to be properly utilized in the best ways possible to bring out the change necessary for sustainable development. We need to explore the gaps between data collection, data utilization, we need to explore how data collection can be further streamlined. We have now identified not just the barriers, but also the opportunities policy making. Our next effort should be geared towards building a culture of evidence-based decision making. Data producers and data users in every area of development and every level should be brought together in regular platforms, providing an avenue for engagement. This includes policymakers, parliamentarians, implementing agencies, educational institutions, media, as well as the public. This data needs to be made available for everyone, most importantly, in a way that is understandable by those other than analysts. This has to be updated. Furthermore, we need to invest in training policymakers and develop a support mechanism that can analyze and interpret data effectively, quantitative as well as qualitative. We also need to invest in creating user-friendly data dashboards and reporting systems to strengthen data collection and proper management. Dear participants of this workshop, with your expertise and knowledge, I believe that the recommendations and the solutions brought forward from this workshop will fit well into the local context, take into consideration the existing challenges for implementation can be undertaken without adding to the already burdened systems within our systems. Your work today is not over. I call of all of you and all other stakeholders on the responsibility of advocating for gender data use in policy making. I ask you to disseminate this information, ensure that this is not the end. As you very well understand, this is just the beginning, the first step. Now is the time to raise our voice on advocacy. Implementation of recommendation of this study is imperative for its success. Let us hold on this momentum so every policy made henceforth is evidence-based, gender-sensitive, and brings to fruition the wishes of the Maldivian people. In closing, I would like to say that integrating gender data into policy making is not a choice, it is a necessity. It is an investment in fairer, more inclusive society where every voice is heard and every person's potential is realized. Let us embrace the power of data to create policies that foster equality, empowerment, and progress of all. Once again, let me thank the organizers, Maldives Bureau of Statistics and Paris 21 for organizing this important forum and for inviting me to be part of this momentous occasion. I wish you all the very best as you embark on the next chapter on gender data usage in policy formulation. I thank you all. Wassalamu alaikum.
Thank you, First Lady. This concludes the first segment of today's workshop. I would like to invite all the participants to take a group picture and please help yourselves to the refreshments arranged for you all. After the break, we will be starting the panel discussion. Thank you. Hello everyone and welcome back to the second segment of today's workshop. I am happy to introduce our panelists for today's panel discussion. First up is Chief Statistician of Maldives Bureau of Statistics, Ms. Aishat Hassan, Minister of State for Education at Ministry of Education, Dr. Ahmed Mohammed, Social Services Coordinator at Ministry of Social and Family Development, Ms. Mariam Raya Ahmed, Vice Chairperson at Hope for Women, Ms. Aishat Hussain Shihab. And we'll be referring to the second Aisha as Atu for the sake of not mixing up the two Aishas. All right, thank you. Handing over to, of course, our moderator, who is Ms. Sophie Kinali from Paris 21. Thank you.
Thank you, Yanni. So perhaps before diving in, since we've all come back from a coffee break and everybody's probably a little bit sleepy, before getting too into the weeds with the content, I thought I'd actually start with a proverb, which is an African proverb. I don't know if you have a similar proverb in the Maldives. And the proverb goes, "It takes a village to raise a child." And you're probably thinking, what does this have to do with raising children? And you would be right. But the part that I would focus on is it takes a village. So the idea is to raise a child, you need more than just one person. You know, you need lots of things. You need health, you need education, you need parents, you need a culture of sort of upbringing. And when we talk about gender data use, what really was confirmed yesterday is that it really takes a lot of skills. So we need to understand how to use data. We need statistical capacity. We need awareness of what are gender issues. And we need skills in communicating gender data. We need skills in analyzing and producing and decision making. And it's unlikely that one single person, no matter how fantastic, would have all of these skills. So in order to make gender data use meaningful, it indeed takes a whole village. It takes all ministries, it takes civil society, it takes the wider public, development partners. And so I think this panel actually quite nicely represents a lot of stakeholders within that village. We have, of course, the main data producers, we have the statistical side, we have the Ministry of Education, so we have sort of wider ministries that maybe aren't specific to gender and aren't specific to data. We then have where the gender is still housed under Ministry of Social and Family Development, and then we have civil society. So I'm really delighted to be able to share, well, I won't be sharing, but my panelists will be sharing some perspectives from across the village of gender data use. So perhaps we can start with just a short question that I'll ask to each of the panelists, which is just, in a nutshell, in just a few minutes, could you explain why gender data matters to your institution? So I will go in order, and I'll start with Aisha. Thank you.
Thank you. I would say gender data matters to MBS, mostly because we are the lead statistical agency, and we share the data with the public to making sure that the data is available to the policymakers, to the general public, to the international partners. So that that's one of the reasons, and at the moment we are also using gender data for the national development of national strategy for the development of gender statistics, so that we would know how the data is used at policy level. So in order to cater for their needs, it is very important to have gender disaggregated data.
Thank you very much. When we talk about the education sector, certainly the data matters, because if you look at the education sector, we try to provide education to all the children from year 4 to 18. And rather than that, if you look at our sector, we have a huge gender imbalance. But in a positive note, we can say that the largest proportion of our teachers are women, female teachers. And also, the students who transition from O-level to A-level, the highest percentage are girls. So there are a lot of areas where we need to use data in order to address the imbalance and also to create gender equity among the sector stakeholders as well. Yeah.
I'm here representing the Ministry of Social and Family Development, and as we are the national gender machinery, our role in mainstreaming gender across all sectors is crucial. And for us, in order for us to be able to do this and to craft policies that are not only informed and realistic, but also measurable, we need to be able to secure gender data from all these different sectors that we're talking about. And the ministry is the institution that serves the most vulnerable members of our community. And so for us to really understand where the disparities are and not just identify it, but also to critically assess the status quo and to be able to find solutions, we need to secure gender data once again. So for us, gender data matters because it is an indispensable tool for us when we're building the foundation for a society that is equitable and inclusive.
As civil society, I think it's very crucial for us to use gender disaggregated data, especially to make informed decisions. And for us, specifically because we work with grassroots organizations across the country, and most of our work is on capacity building and awareness programs, for us it's very important that we make those informed decisions, and our programs are need-based so that we can focus on what's more important, and that data is very important for us so that we can use it for our programs.
Well, you can keep the microphone, Raya, because I'm going to come straight to you. So we understand now a little bit, in a nutshell, why gender data is important across the village. But looking at the results of the study that we saw over the last few days, what do you think are the top 3 challenges in gender data use specifically within your ministry?
Straight to the reality. Okay. One thing for sure within our ministry and in our sector especially is the limited availability of gender data. And not only is gender data scarce, but also the available data that we have faces severe limitations. For example, when we're trying to get specific information, the indicators that we actually require might only be available through surveys which might have been conducted 4 or maybe 5 or even longer years ago. So the data that we get is not up to date. And so we might not be able to craft policies that address the needs of the current society that we are in. And then apart from this, the data is also not granular enough. So when it comes to gender data, disaggregating it by sex is not enough. Because when we talk about individuals, especially men and women as groups, exhibit diversities based on different demographic factors. For example, based on your age, based on your location, disability, and other socioeconomic factors, the experiences vastly differ. So because of this, we need to have data that is disaggregated by different levels, readily available for us to actually be able to use it to meet the needs of our organization. And I think this occurs because of the second reason that I will state, which is which has been highlighted in the discussions yesterday and in the findings as well, that there is a lack of culture of evidence-based policy making. So leaving gender data aside, leaving gender statistics aside, there is a limited understanding of why we need statistics or why we need evidence-based policy making and decision making when we're actually formulating the plans that we will then act upon within the government and other areas as well. So because of this maybe lack of priority, the gender data is also once again pushed back. So it's not the most important thing when it comes to designing policies. Gender data is not seen, gender itself is not seen as an important variable when it comes to policy making, especially the fact that gender is cross-cutting and that it impacts different sectors, not just the social sector or the education sector, but also other sectors such as maybe urban development, maybe tourism, environment, climate change, waste management. We could go on because gender, men and women need to be involved in all these areas, and therefore gender will be a cross-cutting issue. And then the third reason would, of course, be the limited human resources and staff capacity within our institutions, not just within the ministry as well, but in the other institutions that we deal with when we are trying to acquire or secure gender data. So there is limited staff capacity, and there's also because of the limited staff capacity, high turnover, we do not have enough staff that are dedicated to maybe collecting and maintaining statistics and monitoring and being able to get the data and statistics that we need for our use.
Fantastic, thank you, Raya. And if you can hand the microphone right on down, we'll stay at the far end. So the three main challenges raised were then sort of availability, the culture of evidence policymaking, and human resources. Of course, civil society organizations play a very different role when it comes to policymaking and where you come in within that cycle. Does Hope for Women currently draw on gender data when you're looking at advocacy? And if so, do the challenges that Raya mentioned also resonate with the challenges you face?
Absolutely, yes. It's pretty much the same as well for capacity and for the availability of resources, be it human resources or even financial. Mm-hmm. So I'll just touch a little bit more on the financial constraints, because as a CSO, I think that is something that, not that human resource isn't important, but I think for us, something that I would want to highlight, I don't want to go into repeat with everything that Raya had mentioned, so I'll try to make it short. It's more of like the adequacy of resources. We, including funding for data, to have people who are available, experts who are available technically as well. And we have that lack of human resource within the civil society organizations. And civil society as such, I think, is not looked upon as part of the village most of the time, because I don't think the importance and the amount of work that civil society can actually do and contribute into the system is not understood yet. And I think it's a good thing, more positive note that civil society is getting this opportunity to be part of these discussions is very important. It's one of those challenges that we have. And also another one that I want to highlight, apart from what Raya had mentioned, specifically for civil society, is it's more on the kind of data that you retrieve, and how the number of resources that you can go to collect that data. You have to go deep into the community to be able to dissect these things, and there's a lot of intersectionality involved in it. So, and also how much of evidence-based data are you going to be using? What do you call evidence-based data? And that, I think, has to be understood. And it's one of those biggest challenges that we as civil society have when we try to gather that.
Thank you very much. And I would love to see, in the short term, even civil society playing a larger role in that village. And I think when you talk about how closely you work also with grassroots and with the community, I think that's maybe a source of gender data and gender information that can't be taken from just the statistical side. So I think it's great to see that complementarity. Now, there are a lot of misconceptions around gender issues, and this came up in every country we've been working in, but also specifically in the Maldives, and that this is perhaps just something for women. So, Aisha, can you tell us why gender data is maybe not just about women and women's issues, and perhaps even offer an example of some data that showed that?
It is perceived as a women's issue in Maldives, but then it is not. Why I would say that, because if we have, let's say, data points at an aggregate level instead of gender disaggregated data, let's say labor force participation rate, in the recent census 2022, what we have seen is that the labor force participation rate has increased by 0.4% in the Maldives. So, but then when we go to gender disaggregated data, what we are seeing is that it is the male labor force participation rate has gone down by 0.2%, while the female labor force participation rate has gone up by 0.8%. So this is really alarming, because we need to focus on labor force participation rate of men as well as women. Not only, if we had just one figure, we would have focused on women only. So, and also there are regions, let's say Addo city, where the labor force participation rate is very low. So it's not only, I would support what Raya has mentioned, that it is not only the sex disaggregated data, but also we need disaggregated data to the regions, as well as particular groups like disabled population. So it is very important to have these data.
Thank you. I think that's a fantastic example with the labor force, and of course also echoes the points on education and missing gaps of boys in education. So maybe if we stay on the topic of gender, so on one hand, this discussion is about the uptake and use of data. But of course, there were also challenges that came out of the study that were very specific to gender data use. So, Dr. Ahmed Mohammed, gender can often be seen as something that should be addressed by the gender machinery. But of course, it's a cross-cutting issue. So can you maybe share an example of where gender data or research has played a role in designing or implementing policy at the Ministry of Education?
Thank you. Again, I believe that in our sector, in education sector, we often use the gender segregated data in order to build the infrastructure mainly. When we do planning for the infrastructure, like providing toilets for all the students in the schools, because we have specific number of toilets required for specific number of children in a school. But I believe that we need to go beyond that, because nowadays we use it mostly for the planning and policy making related with the infrastructure and development of schools and physical part. But we should try to integrate it in teacher development as well, because we need to strengthen teacher capacity in order to make them aware and also like gender responsive skills. We need to enhance and strengthen these skills of our teachers as well. And also, as I mentioned before, that there is a huge imbalance in our education sector in terms of like the ratio of male and female teachers. I believe that we need to do something in our sector to increase the number of male teachers as well. that is also something that we need to look into our future when we try to develop capacity, and even when we try to address the shortage of teachers as well in the country. But at the moment, the reality is we are very much focused on the policy and planning related to the infrastructure, where we use the gender-related data. And there are certainly a lot of challenges and also limitations in our sector, where we need to come up with addressing the usage of gender data, because we do collect a lot of data, but we really don't use it. We have like sex segregated data with us. And also there's another aspect where we need to cater the students with complex learning profiles as well, the children with disabilities. We need to address and try to minimize the gap, and we need to address with the help of gender data. So there are certainly several areas where we need to look into the curriculum, and also the students' achievement, and also the attendance of the children as well to the schools. So I think we can talk about a lot in the education sector about the use of the data. Yeah.
Absolutely, and it's great to see you coming into office with such a vision for it to be integrated throughout the education sector. So good luck. No, it's a exciting journey to begin. And Raya, I mean, we can see that there's clearly a certain level of awareness within the education ministry, but what do you think can be done in order for gender to be better understood across ministries?
Yeah, that's a tough question, because I think to answer this, I might have to repeat myself and basically say things that we've been saying from the national gender machinery for a long, long time. So to ensure that gender is seen and integrated into all sectors, we need to prioritize gender mainstreaming. And for that, one-off sensitization programs or programs that are just, led by our ministry would not really be effective. So in order for us to actually address this issue, we need to have a holistic strategy. And the Gender Equality Action Plan, as well as the National Gender Statistics Strategy that we are working on, would be an avenue to sort of streamline the work that we are doing and bring all the partners on board. So in order for us to sort of show the importance of gender mainstreaming to all sectors, we would have to do a lot of things. One definitely would be targeted awareness campaigns, sensitization programs, not just for technical level staff of different line ministries or organizations, but also for broader public, for policymakers, for civil society organizations. So nationwide, we need to focus on increasing gender sensitivity, for one. And then we also need to integrate gender perspectives into education. As the State Minister just highlighted, gender perspectives, and it needs to be included in teacher development. And that is the way that we can tap into the younger population and ensure that what we are teaching in the schools also include a gender perspective, and that when they come out of the education system, when they are in the workforce, they would have this kind of mindset going forward. And when it comes to gender mainstreaming, one of the main issues that we face is organizations working in silos. We do not collaborate as effectively as we need to, and so we need interdisciplinary approaches. We need collaboration between different line ministries and different organizations that work in different sectors, because as I've mentioned before, gender is a cross-cutting issue. And the Interagency Working Group on Gender Statistics and the Gender Focal Points are a way that we can sort of bring this plan into motion. So we do have existing frameworks that we can utilize to ensure that we are actually achieving the targets that we are setting out to. And building partnerships, especially empowering and giving spaces for civil society organizations, would be another way that we can empower people to sort of lobby and push for gender mainstreaming, especially within the government. So CSOs play a vital role in ensuring gender mainstreaming is integrated into the policies that we make from the government side. And of course, for all this to happen, we need visible commitment from the top. We need political will, and we need policymakers to be on board with us so that we will be actually able to make a difference and sort of build a culture of sharing and learning and making, once again, working together for a gender equitable Maldives.
Thank you. So I think you've all touched slightly upon the idea of sort of culture and social norms, so not just stayed on the technical side of data, which is great. So maybe I'll focus on some of those cultural barriers that came out of the study. One concept that came up several times that you've also discussed here on the panel is the idea of a lack of culture or a limited culture of evidence-informed policymaking. Notably, policymakers might not always know why this is important and might often defer to other sources to drive policymaking. So I'm going to come back to Dr. Ahmed Mohamed. Are there some specific changes that you would like to see to help create an environment of culture of evidence-informed policymaking within your ministry?
There are a couple of things that we can do. The very first thing is when we try to develop policies, we should not solely rely on logics and perceptions of people. Rather than we need to rely on evidence and data and research findings. That's one thing that we can use in our ministry when we try to develop policies. In order to develop a culture within the ministry or within the sector, again, I believe that even Raya highlighted about the collaboration. We need to build collaboration between other different partners. For example, the Ministry of Education can collaborate with other ministries and even the universities, because universities, they engage highly in research activities where they have a lot of evidences. And we need to establish a good collaboration with the universities and all other different parties in order to come up with research-driven policies. That's, again, one thing. And since I'm overseeing the policy planning and research division of the Ministry of Education at the moment, I believe that we need to increase the capacity of the research cell or the research unit within the policy planning and research division as well. Because unless we, for example, if you don't have the researchers or a good research cell at the division, it's going to be really difficult for us to come up with research-driven policy. And there are a lot of things that we can do in order to develop a culture within the ministry as well as within the education sector through several initiatives and also number of interventions that we can use. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So I will pass back now to Aisha. So we spoke a lot about dissemination in the last couple of days as well. And a lot of the responsibility for ensuring that gender data reaches different stakeholders, so the public and policymakers, lies on MBS, or this is the perception. From your perspective, is there anything that policymakers themselves could do to support you in targeting your dissemination activities or making them more efficient in terms of promoting evidence use?
Yeah, there's a lot that policymakers themselves can do. First thing is making sure that sufficient resources are available to to MBS. This includes the human resources and also the financial resources sufficient for us to carry out the activities. And also the advocacy work that we do, sometimes that is done with the assistance of external donors and sponsorships. So that is something that the policymakers can do. And one more thing that they can do is they can demonstrate showing that they have used these data for the policy making, so they can be gender data champions. They can act as so that the others in the policy making level can also copy them and then show to the public that okay, data is used by the policymakers, so that the others or at the grassroots level, everybody starts using the data. They feel that their data is important.
Absolutely agree with that statement. So, Art, it's back to you. I know that as civil society, you not only use data, but of course, as you mentioned before, you produce a lot of research and data. So what type of relationship for Hope for Women would you like to have with government ministries in order to make your own research and data be taken up more and influence policy making?
To have us more involved. Putting it very short. But I think a lot of data, when you collect data, something that is very important is that people are willing to give you that information for data purposes. And I think when we talk about evidence-based data, that is what's most important. And for civil society, what we would like is for us to be more involved in it. And I'm stressing more on that because than talking to authorities, it's always best when you go to the public. If you are a civil society organization, they're more open to you. They will give you more information. They're going to give you more data. They're going to, specifically, if you go for, when I spoke of need-based capacity building programs that we have, awareness programs that we have, the kind of data, the kind of information that we get, as Raya mentioned, be more collaborative and have these resources open to us as well, be more transparent. And I think that is the kind of relationship that we can have with all the stakeholders. So we are able to provide them the same, and they can also assist us in reaching out to the most, say for minority, little minority groups around the country. Because geographically, the way that we are, every single island community is different from the other. Be it in the same atoll, one island to the other, it's different. So the kind of data that you're going to receive from one island to the other is also different. So with the ministries and with the stakeholders, for example, even the island councils, if we have a better relationship with them, targeting a certain set of groups for a certain set of data, it's going to be more easier then. So the more involvement, the more transparency there is, the more collaborative work that can be done for capacity building or for awareness programs. And even as the mention of universities, how much of research studies that they do at the universities, there are a number of them in different islands now as well, different campuses in different islands as well. So if we are to reach that student population even, have CSOs reach out to them and gather that particular data for you. So I think that is something that I would want to highlight. Have more collaborative work done and a lot of dialogue in making these policies.
Thank you very much. A very important perspective from civil society, and thank you also for raising some points today that were very specific to the Maldives, because these are very important to understand what are potential opportunities and barriers locally. So these ideas about, islands and reaching islands and the involvement of different island governments is very, very important. So I'm going to pose one final question to all the panelists. I'm going to try and give you just 1 minute per person. And the question is, can you summarize one thing you will try to change at your institution based on the results of the study presented this morning?
One thing is we would increase the outreach to the policymakers, to the public. So that's something that we, in the past, we have not focused so much on. We have focused much on the data collection and analyzing, and also presenting in our website. But rather than going to them, presenting the data, teaching them how to interpret them and how to use the data in policy making, that is, I think, more relevant.
In our case, I believe that we also need to enhance the use of data, because we have a lot of data, but I don't believe that we use it at the maximum. And that's one thing. And in order to do that, we need to invest in a robust data infrastructure in our education system, because at the moment, the system that we have is not that much robust, and it doesn't provide, in a sense we can say it's not very user-friendly in order to use the data in our policy making. So we need to invest in a robust data infrastructure and also make data available to the researchers as well. Yeah.
As for me, I have been involved in this study since the beginning, and I am also working closely with our partners from MBS and Paris 21 on the National Gender Statistics Strategy as well. So for me, I think what I can do in my institution is to ensure that all my experiences with working in gender statistics and everything I've learned so far, to ensure that this is institutionalized in the memory of the organization, and to share it and champion evidence-based policy making within our organization.
I think one thing that we would like to do from a CSO perspective is sensitize the communities for what gender data is. Because I think it's a very foreign concept still, and nobody really understands the importance of gender disaggregated data for policy making or for decision making. So I think that sensitization is very necessary before we start any proper work that needs to be done, be it collaborative work with other institutions as well. So that sensitization has to start from the grassroots, from the island communities. Have them understand what gender data is and why it's so important for policy making, and then move forward step by step, slowly.
Thank you very much. So you've heard from the panelists, and I've got a request which is maybe not going to be so popular. But yesterday, I asked those of you who were here to write something that you could do or something that your institution could do to increase how gender data is used in policymaking. Is there anybody who could, maybe just 2-3 people who would be happy to stand up and share either one thing that you could do personally or one thing that you would like your institution to do? I know you've written it, so I know you've thought about it. Otherwise, I'm going to pick on maybe one person who can then choose the second person. And I'm going to pick on, now you're testing my knowledge of names, which is even more difficult. I'm going to pick on Tina and Yanni to share together. what you think that MBS could do, perhaps what you wrote yesterday, one thing you could do institutionally or personally to improve how gender data is used in policy making.
Would you like to go first?
So one thing that is very important is absolutely like awareness and dissemination, right? So a part of that is actually with census also, we are having at all level dissemination going on right now, and something similar can be done. I mean, we can see that it's possible. So collaborating with the island councils, collaborating with the atoll councils is something that we can do. And maybe that is something at an institutional level that we can do. Maybe we can collaborate with CSOs while doing this, because I'm aware that there are CSOs also in atolls that is operating, and they're just not known. So maybe that is something that we can do. And that's something that I like personally. Dissemination is like the most, it's on the back end. It's the back burner that I see almost all the time. So I want to advocate for dissemination being a very important thing, and that's what I think. So, yeah. Thank you.
If you'd like to. Thank you for spotlighting on me, first of all. For me, from personally, what I would like to do is try to convince everyone as to why gender data matters for them, for us at the policy level, and also at an individual level. So if we look at everyone here, I think we are those who are mostly involved in generating data and looking at specifically trying to come up with gender data. But we have to think about those who are not here, though, which is the public or the policy or the other policy makers who are there. So yeah, we had a very interactive and interesting interaction with the younger generation also, and that's what I feel like is where we need to tap in to make for us to sort of increase this dialogue that we have, engage with them, and try to bring out someone other than us to talk about gender data. That's what I feel.
Thank you, Tina. I know that you had some great points yesterday, so since you're in my group. So could I pick on you? What's one thing you could do personally or within your institution that the institution could do to increase gender data use in policy making?
So yesterday when we wrote on those papers, I wrote something similar to what she said. Gender data could be used to let the public know how important the data is when trying to come up with policies, especially when we talk about reviewing our policies. I think gender data could be used to find out the gaps that are in our policies, current policies, so that while we review it, we can fill in those gaps. So institutional-wise and personally also, I would like to use the gender data in such a way that we can make our current policies even much better.
And then perhaps one final perspective, maybe I can pick on UNDP representative. Our final spotlight today.
I think building on what Tina and the colleagues over there mentioned, I think this is a good opportunity to use the data to review existing policies to provide better services to the communities. I think looking at the documents that you had reviewed for the purposes of this research, the Gender Equality Action Plan, the Decentralization Amendment, both are sort of the Gender Equality Action Plan at its midterm review next year. The Decentralization Act Amendment will complete 5 years very soon, if it hasn't already. Both require to be reviewed to see how impactful it has been, what needs to be sort of included further,
to revise so that our actions in terms of gender equality in the country continues. But since it's a new administration, I think this is a good opportunity to sort of consider these evaluations and go forward. As UNDP, this is something we will take forward. We, of course, use data, but I think gender data has been a challenge for us as well. Not all sectors carry this data. So sometimes when we do develop policies or interventions for us, it's a challenge to use the data. But we will more proactively with our partners make sure that we use the data moving forward in our policy making.
So I've been told I've been too generous and forgiving to the head table. So if you don't mind, I'm going to ask maybe just a couple of words. I know that you weren't all here yesterday, so maybe if you could just share a few words on what you think your institution or you personally could do in going forward. And then we'll start here and go round. We'll reach everybody.
Thank you so much. I think the conversations we're having are very interesting, and there's a lot to take away from this. Equally important, I believe, is taking forward this journey. I think this conversation should not stop here. I think we should make aware what's been discussed here, how important this is, and as all our panelists in different institutions have said, when we talk about gender data, I still don't think, apart from people who are involved in it, understand the depth and importance of it, how it could be utilized, how important it is. So I think taking this forward, it's on to every one of us to continue this journey and the importance of making the best use of it. When we talk about policy making, of course it's important, but equally important it is for every individual of the society to understand the importance of it in every decision made. So I think carrying forward the journey would be very important.
Thank you. I just wanted to add, like we discussed a little while back, this is the most ideal time to be talking about this. I feel like the government and our institutions are planning a 5-year plan on what we are going to do, what directions we're taking, and I'm hoping that Raya will make sure that all her learnings are incorporated into all of this policy making that we are going to be doing. So we at the ministry for sure are spending the next couple of weeks on planning what directions we want to take for the next 5 years. So I think this is ideal timing, and I look forward to ensuring that this is taken on board, and we plan to not just end it here, but this is just a beginning. So thank you.
Thank you. I think from MB's side, we have a very big role to play, and we want to collaborate more and work together with all the agencies, including the government agencies, CSOs, and even the local governments to try and improve this area and to make, make what people need are available in a user-friendly way. And one of the things I really want to do from our organization is to come up with a publication that is women and men in Maldives. So that is something that is something that I have like personally interest as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I noted down that women and men in the Maldives, so I'll be waiting for the report in my inbox. I look forward to it. I don't want to cut anybody off. If anybody else wants to share something, we will then, of course, afterwards have a sort of light lunch. So if you do want to look over what's been said, I will try and digitalize it as well and share it with you all. But I think from me, I just want to thank the panelists. It's been fantastic. Thank you very much for being part of the village. And thank you for taking it forward among all the... I say thank you in advance. I'm assuming you will take it forward with all the different sectors and all the different stakeholder groups that have been involved. So thank you very much from me. And I think I will hand over to our wonderful MC, Yanni.
Thank you, panelists. That was very insightful. So to close off, I would like to invite our chief statistician to say a few closing remarks, and then we'll be wrapping up this session. And I'm very grateful for you all coming here today and actually being so passionate about this discussion. So I would like to thank every single one of you, and I would like to hand it over to Aisha to say a few words.
First of all, thank you very much for being here today. And also some of you were here yesterday and you made a lot of contributions. Thank you, Sophie, for flying all over from Paris and being here today. And also presenting us the findings, and also the validation workshop was excellent. And I would like to thank all those who have worked with us tirelessly in making all the arrangements, particularly Yani, Tina, and also Raya from Ministry of Social and Family Development. It's been a wonderful workshop. Thank you so much.
So I think that concludes today's session, and I would like to tell you all that the refreshments are ready. So go and enjoy, and thank you so much. Oh, almost ready? Okay, 2 more minutes, it seems. But enjoy your lunch, and thank you so much.